My name is Lucas. I'm 27. I work as a graphic designer from home, and I never imagined that 3:14 a.m. could be the exact moment my life split into before and after. But it was. And I need to tell you how we got to that moment, because what happened that early morning changed absolutely everything between me and my best friend. Raphael. 28. A personal trainer, an athletic body he built with years of discipline, an easy smile that lights up any room. That kind of guy people just gravitate toward. We met 5 years ago at a mutual friend's birthday party. I remember he was in the corner of the living room arguing Pearl Jam versus Nirvana with a group, and I couldn't resist. I jumped into the conversation defending that Black was the most honest song of the 90s, and he laughed that way he has, ran his hand through his short dark hair in a gesture I would later learn was nervousness, and said that anyone who understood that song understood something about the human soul. We became instant friends. That kind of friendship where it feels like you've known the person for decades, you know? Late night talks, comfortable silences, laughing about absolutely nothing. When we both needed a place to live 2 years ago, sharing an apartment felt like the most obvious decision in the world. A 2-bedroom in a trendy neighborhood, mismatched furniture we collected over time, movie posters he picked, and I pretended to complain about but secretly loved. That organized mess of people who really live together and don't just coexist. And it was right there, about 6 months after we moved in, that something changed. Or rather, something changed in me. It wasn't a specific moment, nothing cinematic like a lightning bolt. It was gradual. It was the way he would walk through the living room in the morning, still half asleep, shirtless on his way to the kitchen. It was the genuine laugh when I showed a design project that had turned out well. It was the full attention he gave me when I talked about something that mattered to me. Those warm brown eyes fixed on mine as if in that instant there were only the two of us in the entire universe. It was how my heart sped up when he casually rested his hand on my shoulder. How my stomach twisted when he brought a girl home. How I lay awake at night knowing he was in the next room, so close and completely out of reach, because Raphael was straight. At least that's what everyone believed. What he himself believed, apparently. He dated women, talked about them with an enthusiasm that seemed genuine, carried himself like someone entirely comfortable with a clearly defined and socially accepted sexuality. And me? I was his best gay friend, the person he trusted, the confidant who listened to his dates and gave advice, while my own heart quietly shattered inside my chest. I became an expert at hiding, adjusting my glasses when he caught me staring too long, using self-deprecating humor to deflect when he asked why I wasn't dating anyone, wearing those oversized hoodies that became my armor, something to make me feel less exposed, less vulnerable. I built a fortress around my feelings and learned to live inside it, because the alternative, risking our friendship by confessing something impossible, was unthinkable. 2 years. 2 whole years living on that emotional tightrope, balancing my unrequited love with the need to keep the most important person in my life close. 2 years convincing myself I could handle it, that it was better to have him as a friend than not have him at all, that I was strong enough to carry this weight alone. But here's the thing about unspoken feelings. They don't disappear just because you lock them away. They grow. They accumulate. They leak at the edges when you least expect it. And Raphael, no matter how much I tried to ignore it, sent signals that confused me deeply. The touch that lingered a second longer than necessary. The thinly veiled jealousy when I mentioned someone who had asked me out. The way he sometimes looked at me, with an intensity I couldn't decode, as if he was trying to say something words couldn't reach. I always dismissed it. It's just his way, I'd tell myself. Straight guys are like that with close friends. You're seeing things because you want to see them. Don't turn friendship into something it's not just because you're in love. I had a whole catalog of justifications, defense mechanisms, ways to protect my heart from hope, because hope was dangerous. Hope could destroy me, so I kept going. Design in the morning, afternoon coffee with him between his training sessions, our movie nights where he picked action and I pretended not to prefer drama, kitchen conversations about everything and nothing while the city slept outside, our routine, our shared life, our delicate balance that I was so afraid to break. And honestly, I thought I could keep it forever. I thought I had mastered the art of loving someone in silence. But I was wrong. I didn't know it yet, but I was about to find out that secrets have an expiration date, and mine was up. Until that night. That Saturday had started like any other. Raphael left around 7 in the evening, wearing that cologne he always used before a date, the one that left a trail down the hallway and made my stomach twist in a way I didn't like to admit. He had casually mentioned during afternoon coffee that he had a date, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. And it was, right? For him, it was. Another girl he'd met at the gym, another dinner at some Italian restaurant, another night he wouldn't be spending at home with me watching some dumb show on Netflix while we shared a cold pizza. I said it was fine. I gave that smile I'd perfected over 2 years, the one that said, "That's great, man, go have fun," while something inside me twisted. I adjusted my glasses, pretended to be focused on my laptop, on a design project I had to turn in on Monday. He slapped my shoulder as he left, that casual touch that burned on my skin even through the loose hoodie I always wore. "Don't wait up for me," he joked, with that smile of his that lit everything up. I laughed, said I wouldn't even notice he'd gone. Of course I noticed. The night dragged. I tried to work. I put on music, then gave up. Every minute felt like an hour as my mind made up movies about how perfect his date must be. 9:30, 10, midnight. The rain started coming down outside, amplifying the apartment's silence and my own toxic thoughts of jealousy and resignation. And then, at 1:52 in the morning, I heard the key in the door. My heart did a stupid little jump. He was coming back. Too early to have stayed at her place. Too early for the date to have gone as well as I'd imagined in my head. I didn't know whether to feel relieved or guilty for feeling relieved. The door opened and I knew right away something was wrong. Raphael stumbled in slightly, and when the hallway light hit his face, I saw his eyes were red. Not from crying, not yet, but that look you get when you've drunk too much and you're holding something heavy inside. He saw me on the couch and stopped, like he hadn't expected me to still be awake, even after I'd said I wouldn't wait up for him. "Hey," he said, and his voice came out rougher than usual. "Hey," I answered, sitting up straighter, trying to read his expression. "Came back early." He let out a bitter laugh that didn't suit him at all, a sound without any hint of joy. "Yeah, came back." He shrugged off his wet jacket and went straight to the kitchen. He returned with a beer and let himself drop onto the couch beside me. Too close. The smell of rain and alcohol flooded my personal space. We sat in silence. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to ask what had happened, but the other part, the part that knew me far too well, was afraid of the answer. He was the one who broke the silence. "You know that feeling," he started, voice low, staring at the bottle in his hand. "Like you're doing everything right? Everything you're supposed to do? But it still feels totally wrong?" My stomach tightened. I knew that feeling better than he imagined. "What happened?" I asked softly, trying to sound like the best friend I technically was, not the guy in love I'd secretly become. He took a long swig of the beer. "Mariana is amazing," he said, and I felt that familiar sting of jealousy. But there was something in his voice that didn't add up. "She's beautiful, smart, funny. We had a great conversation at dinner. She's exactly the kind of girl I should want." Should. That word hung in the air between us, heavy, loaded with something I couldn't name. "But?" I prodded, because obviously there was a huge but. He laughed again, that humorless sound. "But when she kissed me at the end of the night, when we were in her car and she leaned in and kissed me, He stopped, ran a hand over his face. "I didn't feel anything, Lucas. Absolutely nothing. And the worst part is I tried. I really tried to feel something to make it work, but it was like I was playing a role, like I was pretending to be someone I'm not. My name." He'd said my name. He always said my name, of course. We were best friends. But there was something different in the way it came out this time. Something more. Vulnerable. Raphael, I began, but I didn't know how to finish that sentence. There's something wrong with me, he said, and now his voice was trembling slightly. There has to be something wrong, because this isn't the first time. It's been a while that I can't connect with anyone. Not the way I should. Not the way everyone expects. He finally looked at me, and what I saw in those warm brown eyes, I knew so well scared me. Fear, confusion, a fragility I'd never seen in him before, not in Raphael. Always confident, always sure of himself, always knowing exactly who he was and what he wanted. But now, sitting there on our couch at 2 a.m. on a rainy April Saturday, he looked completely lost. There's nothing wrong with you, I said, and my voice came out stronger than I intended. Sometimes people just don't. Click. It doesn't mean something's wrong. But what if I do have? He insisted, turning more toward me, his knees nearly touching mine. What if I've been pretending to be someone I'm not all this time? What if I've been lying to everyone, even to myself, about what I really want? My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. There was something happening there, something bigger than a bad date night, something cracking the carefully kept surface of our friendship. What do you want? I asked, and I barely recognized my own voice. He looked at me for a long moment. The rain kept falling outside, a steady, soft rhythm against the windows. The lamplight made shadows on his face, highlighting his jawline, the curve of his lips that I had forced myself not to look at directly for so long. I don't know, he whispered finally. Or maybe I do, and I'm too scared to admit it. The silence that followed was different from the silences we'd shared before. It wasn't comfortable. It was charged, electric, like the air before a storm. There were unspoken questions hanging between us, truths pressing to get out. He took another drink of his beer. I adjusted my glasses, that nervous gesture I always made when I didn't know what to do with my hands. I wanted to touch him, wanted to take his hand and tell him everything would be okay, that he wasn't alone, that I understood more than he imagined. But I did none of that. Because doing it would cross a line, would reveal things I'd sworn to keep hidden. Have you ever, he began, felt like there's something right in front of you that you want so badly but you shouldn't want? The irony was palpable. Yes, I answered. I know exactly how that feels. His gaze dropped to my mouth for a millisecond before returning to my eyes. Sometimes, he said, his voice even lower now, almost a whisper, I look at my life and wonder who I'd be if I had the courage to be honest. Like really, about everything. You're one of the bravest people I know, I said. And it was true. Raphael had always been fearless in everything he did. Seeing him like this, so uncertain, so vulnerable, stirred something deep in me. Not about this, he replied. Not about what really matters. The kitchen clock ticked on the wall with its silent beats. 2:43, 2:56, 3 o'clock. We stayed there on the couch, the distance between our bodies shrinking imperceptibly with every minute that passed. He opened another beer. His eyes were getting redder and redder, not from the drink, but from something struggling not to come out. Lucas, he said, and again there was something different about the way he said my name. As if it mattered. As if it meant more than just a name. Say it, I encouraged, even though every instinct in me was screaming that I wasn't ready for what he was about to say. He opened his mouth, closed it, ran his hand through his hair again, that nervous gesture intensifying, looked at me, then at the bottle, then at me again. And then the digital clock on the stereo flashed. 3:14 a.m. He took a deep breath, like he was about to jump off a cliff. The air got heavy. I didn't know it, but those next words would be the point of no return for our story. Lucas, he said for the third time. But now it wasn't just my name. It was a plea, a confession, a question. all wrapped into 2 syllables he pronounced with a tenderness I had never, in any of my secret daydreams, imagined hearing from him. That Lucas wasn't friendly. It carried a weight that made my stomach flip. It was the tone of someone about to cross an irreversible line. "Lucas," he repeated, his voice trembling. His look stripped me of any defense. "I need to tell you something," he continued, running his hand through his hair again, that familiar nervous gesture. "And I know I'm going to mess everything up, but I can't keep this in anymore." My brain was screaming at me to do something, laugh, make a joke, change the subject, anything to interrupt whatever was about to happen, because I knew that look now. I recognized that tension in the air. It was the same kind of tension I felt staying up late thinking about him, noticing how my eyes lingered too long, how my chest tightened whenever he mentioned a girl. But I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I could only sit there on our old, beaten-up couch with the smell of beer and pizza lingering, while the digital clock read 3:14 a.m., and my whole world waited to either collapse or be rebuilt. "Do you remember Mariana?" he asked suddenly, and I blinked, confused by the change of direction. "The girl from tonight?" "I remember," I managed to say, my voice coming out raspier than I expected. "She's nice, pretty, funny." Raphael looked at his own hands, as if studying the lines in his palm. The kind of girl I should want, the kind that would make sense for me to want. Each word was a punch. I knew exactly where this was going. He was going to tell me he was in love with her, that he was going to start a serious relationship, that he'd get married, have kids, and I'd have to smile and pretend to be happy while dying inside watching him build the perfect life with someone else. But I couldn't stop thinking about you. The world stopped. No, seriously. I swear everything froze for a second. The rain on the window, the low hum of the fridge in the kitchen, my own breath. Everything hung in that space between his words and my understanding of what they meant. "What?" was all I could say, and it sounded pathetic even to myself. At the restaurant, talking to her, laughing at her jokes, I could only think that you would find that dumb story amusing, that you would roll your eyes that way you do when you think something's pretentious. When she touched my hand, I thought about how different her hands are. When she smiled, I realized it wasn't the smile I wanted to see. He finally looked at me again, and there were tears in his eyes. Raphael, whom I'd never seen cry. Raphael, who was all confidence and easy smiles and that calm masculinity that made everyone feel safe around him. His eyes were red, wet, vulnerable in a way that both broke my heart and filled it at the same time. "It's been a long time, Lucas. Not just today. Not because I drank. I just never had the courage to admit it. Not even to myself, much less to you." My mind was running in circles. This couldn't be real. It was the beer. It was exhaustion. It was some kind of collective hallucination. Because Raphael couldn't be saying what I thought he was saying. Raphael, who dated different girls every week. Raphael, who joked about how I needed to get a girlfriend. Raphael, who represented everything I could never have. "I don't understand," I whispered. "You always... straight?" He laughed, bitter. That's what I kept telling myself. But it was a lie. Every time I watched you, every time I felt jealous, every time I made an excuse to stay close. He wiped his face abruptly. "I was desperate to tell you." He stopped, bit his lip, looked away again. And I was in absolute shock. Total. Complete. Because this was everything I'd always wanted to hear, and at the same time the most terrifying thing someone could tell me. Because what if it was real? What if Raphael really felt what I felt? What would that mean? For us? For our friendship? For everything? "Say something," Raphael begged, and his voice was broken, desperate. "Anything. You can tell me to go to hell. You can laugh in my face. You can tell me I'm crazy, and it's just the alcohol talking. Just don't stay silent. Please." But I couldn't speak. My throat was closed. My brain was trying to process 5 years of interactions under this new light. All the times our shoulders brushed on the couch and he didn't pull away. All the times he made up excuses to come into my room. All the times his look lingered an extra second on me. Everything gaining a new meaning, a new weight, a new possibility that was absolutely terrifying and wonderful. I ruined everything, didn't I? Raphael let out a humorless laugh and started to stand. Sorry, Lucas. I shouldn't have. Sorry. And that was what made me react, seeing him step back, seeing him shut down again, watching the possibility of something I didn't even know was possible slip through my fingers. Wait, I said, and my hand grabbed his wrist without me even thinking. The touch was electric. It always had been, but I always ignored it. Always pretended it was normal. Now there was no ignoring it. No pretending. Raphael froze. He looked at my hand on his wrist, looked at me. And in that look there was hope and fear in equal measure. Don't go, I whispered, and I didn't even recognize my own voice. Just give me a second to process. Because I need to be sure I understood. I need to be sure you're saying what I think you're saying. That I think about you constantly, Raphael said, and now his voice was steady again, determined. That I want you in a way that scares me. That when you sleep, I lie awake listening to your breathing in the next room and wishing it was in the same room, the same bed. That I sabotage my own chances with other people because none of them are you. Each word was a revelation. Each sentence rebuilt everything I thought I knew about us. That's what I'm saying, Lucas. I know you're my best friend. I know I shouldn't feel this way. I know I will probably lose you now. But I can't keep lying. I can't keep pretending you're not the most important person in my life. That you're not the person I want most. Tears started to run down my face before I even noticed I was crying. They weren't tears of sadness. They were relief, shock, a hope so big it hurt in my chest. Raphael, I began, but I didn't know how to continue. How do you respond to something like that? How do you tell someone you've secretly loved for 2 years that you feel exactly the same way without sounding like you're making it up on the spot? How do you cross that chasm between friendship and something more, without knowing if there's ground on the other side? You don't have to say anything, he cut in, interpreting my silence as rejection. I get it, just please don't hate me. I can't bear the idea of losing you completely. You won't lose me, I said quickly, and squeezed his wrist harder. You won't because… I stopped, took a deep breath, looked into his eyes. Those brown eyes I'd memorized without realizing, that I knew in every mood, every nuance of feeling. And I realized I had 2 options. I could pretend I didn't understand. I could laugh and say he was too drunk. I could protect my heart and keep our friendship exactly as it was safe, predictable, and incomplete. Or I could be brave for the first time in my life. I could risk everything. I could admit the truth I'd hidden so well I almost believed the lie myself. The rain kept pounding the window. The clock read 3:16 now. 2 minutes that felt like an eternity. 2 minutes that split my life into before and after. And I had to decide. Now. In that moment. Safety or truth. Friendship or possibility. Fear or courage. I looked at Raphael, at the raw vulnerability on his face, at the fragile hope he was trying to hide and failing miserably. And I knew there was only one choice. One question that would change everything or confirm everything. A question that terrified me and freed me at the same time. Raphael, I said, my voice shaking but steady. When you say you want me, do you mean it the way I think you mean it? He nodded slowly, his eyes fixed on mine. If I ask you how long you've felt this, will you answer me honestly? Always, he whispered. Since we moved in together, I think. Maybe before. I tried to ignore it. I tried to pretend. But every day living with you only made it worse. Or better. I don't know which word fits anymore. It was real. And terrifying. Fate was handing me the chance I'd asked for years. But it came wrapped in fear. I breathed in deep, feeling like I was stepping on glass, and asked the point of no return question. What are you trying to say, Rafa? The words came out quieter than I expected, more vulnerable, as if I already knew the answer would change everything, as if I were asking permission to hope. He looked away. His fingers trembled against my hand, and for a second I thought he would back out, that he'd laugh, make a joke, turn it all into a drunk's prank. But he didn't. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, there were tears. I had never seen Raphael cry. Never. In 5 years of friendship, in 2 apartment moves, through breakups, through grief and loss, never. He'd always been the guy who held everything together. The strong one. The person everyone turned to when they needed someone steady. And there he was, collapsing in front of me at 3:18 a.m. "Lucas, His voice broke. "I don't know how to say this." "Then don't say it," I whispered. "Just look at me." He looked, and it was like seeing him for the first time. Not the confident Raphael, the charming Raphael, the Raphael who always had an answer, but the real Raphael, the one who was scared, the one who was lost. "I'm tired," he said, and his voice broke again. "I'm so tired of pretending." "Pretending what?" He let out a bitter laugh. No humor in it. "Pretending to be what everyone expects me to be. Going out with girls because that's what I was supposed to do. Forcing attraction I don't feel. Lying to myself every time I look at you and... He stopped, covered his face with his hands. His shoulders shook. I didn't know what to do. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. My mind was yelling a million things at once, but all I could do was sit there beside him, my hand still on his wrist. "Rafa," I began, but he shook his head. "Let me finish, please, because if I stop now, I'll never have the courage to say it." I nodded. I waited. He took his hands from his face, looked at the ceiling, at the walls, anywhere but at me. "I always knew, you know," he said softly. "Deep down, always. But I pushed it down, pretended it didn't exist. Because it was easier. Because my family, my friends, everyone expected me to be a certain way, and I was. I was that guy. The guy who dates pretty girls, who works out, who acts like a real man." His voice was heavy with bitterness now. "And it worked," he went on. "For a while, it worked. I could convince myself, but then you showed up." My stomach twisted. "And when we started living together, it became impossible to keep pretending. Because every day I woke up and you were there. Every day I saw you in your robe making coffee. Every day I heard your laugh. And I realized that it wasn't just friendship. It never was just friendship." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes destroyed me. Pain, fear, hope. "I spent 2 years trying to kill this inside me," he said. 2 years going out with woman after woman, trying to feel something, anything, trying to prove to myself that I'm not. He couldn't finish. "That you're not what?" I asked gently. He stared at me, tears now running down his face. "Gay. Bi. I don't know. Someone who's not what everyone thinks I am." The word came out like a confession, as if he'd kept it locked away for years and it finally exploded out. "But I am, Lucas. I am, and I can't keep fighting it. I can't keep pretending you're not the person I most want to see every day. That your smile doesn't make my day worth it. That I don't stay up at night thinking about what it would be like if we..." He stopped again, took a deep breath. "And tonight, when I went out with Mariana, it was awful. Because she's nice, you know? She's pretty, she's smart, she likes me. It should have been perfect. But I spent the whole night thinking about you, about coming home, about seeing you on the couch, and I realized I can't live like this anymore. I can't keep hating myself for feeling what I feel." The silence that fell after that was deafening. I could hear the rain outside, the sound of a car passing on the street, his heavy breathing, mine, and in the middle of all that, A single truth screaming in my head. He feels the same as I do. After 2 years. After I convinced myself it was impossible. After I accepted that I would keep this feeling forever. He feels the same as I do. But along with the hope came a cold terror. The pain in his eyes was visible. He was raw. And I knew that one wrong move, one wrong word now, and I'd lose him forever. "Rafa," I said softly, "look at me." He looked. "Thank you," I said, "for trusting me, for telling me this." He let out an awkward laugh. "You must think I'm crazy, right? Coming home drunk at dawn, crying, saying these things." "No," I cut him off. "I don't think you're crazy." I squeezed his hand, interlacing our fingers. "I think you're brave." His eyes widened. "Because admitting this, saying it out loud, even scared, not knowing how I'd react, that's not crazy, Rafa. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen someone do." A new tear rolled down his face. "I'm so scared," he whispered. "Of what?" "Of everything. Of losing you. Of losing my family. Of being rejected. Of being wrong about us. Of not being wrong and not knowing what to do with it." I cupped his face with both hands, forced him to look at me. "You won't lose me," I said. "Never. Do you hear me? Never." "How can you be sure?" "Because I started and stopped. Because it was my turn now. My turn to be brave. My turn to stop hiding. Because I understand," I finished. "More than you imagine." He looked at me confused. "What do you mean?" And there, with his fingers woven through mine, his face in my hands, the clock reading 3:20 in the morning, I realized I couldn't run anymore. His vulnerability had broken down all my defenses. It had destroyed all my excuses. It had made it impossible to keep hiding. So I took a deep breath, and I decided I was going to tell my own truth. My voice was shaky. I felt my heart pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. "Rafael," I inhaled. "I need to tell you something." He squeezed my fingers, still interlaced with his brown eyes fixed on mine, vulnerable, waiting. "Say it, Lucas, please." And there, at 3:20 in the morning, with the rain still hitting the window, with the smell of beer and vulnerability hanging in the air, with 5 years of friendship and 2 years of secrets suffocating me, I decided to stop lying. "I love you," I said. And before he could interrupt, before I could lose my nerve, I continued. "It's not new. It's not because of what you just told me. It's not because you're drunk or because it's 3 in the morning and everything feels different." My voice was breaking, but I couldn't stop. "I've loved you for 2 years, Rafael. 2 years. Since that night you came home laughing that way of yours, talking about that gym client who confused bench press with squats. You were wearing that old gray shirt, the one with a hole in the sleeve, and you dropped down onto the couch next to me, so close I could feel the heat of your body, and you started watching that ridiculous documentary about penguins with me without complaining." A tear ran down my face. I didn't even notice when I started crying. It was in that moment I realized that what I felt for you wasn't just friendship. It wasn't just admiration. It was love. The kind of love that makes you want to wake up next to the person every day. The kind of love that makes you memorize the way they laugh when something really cracks them up. The kind of love that makes you feel at home even when everything else seems to be falling apart. Rafael was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Surprise, yes, but also something else. Something that looked like hope. 2 years, I repeated, my voice almost a whisper now. 2 years convincing myself it was impossible. 2 years telling myself you were straight, that I was being an idiot, that I needed to get over it. 2 years watching you go out with women and come home telling me about the dates, and me smiling and pretending to give advice while my heart broke a little more each time. I let go of his hands. I needed to pull away a bit, create some space to breathe. But he didn't let me. He grabbed my wrists firmly, pulling me back. "Lucas, No, let me finish, I asked. Because if I don't say it now, I'll never have the courage again. He nodded, his eyes shining with unshed tears. I fell in love with my best friend. With the guy who shares the apartment with me. With the guy who knows me better than anyone. And for 2 years, I kept it inside because I was so afraid of ruining what we had. Because having you as a friend felt better than risking losing you completely. My voice failed. But then you come home drunk on a Saturday night and tell me you can't stop thinking about me. And all that fortress I built, all those defenses, all those rational arguments about why I needed to hide what I felt, they just crumbled. I love you, Raphael. I love you in a way that scares me. In a way that makes me want to be brave even when I'm afraid. In a way that makes me want to risk everything, even knowing we might ruin our friendship in the process. The silence that followed was deafening. Just the rain and our racing hearts filling the space between us. Then Raphael spoke, and his voice was hoarse with emotion. 2 years? I nodded, unable to trust my voice. You carried this alone for 2 years? Yes. He let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I'm an idiot, he said. A complete idiot. And before I could ask what he meant, before I could process what was happening, Raphael pulled my face toward his and kissed me. It wasn't a tentative kiss. It wasn't a kiss of doubt or curiosity. It was a kiss of 2 years of unresolved tension, of confessions that needed to be said, of truths that could no longer be hidden. His lips met mine with an urgency that took my breath away. One of his hands was at the back of my neck, fingers tangled in my hair. The other at my waist, pulling me closer, eliminating any space that still existed between our bodies, and I responded. God, how I responded. My hands found his face, holding as if he might disappear at any moment. I could feel his tears mingling with mine. I could taste beer and truth. I could feel 2 years of repressed desire finally being released. When we finally pulled apart, both of us breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. 2 years. He whispered against my lips. You loved me for 2 years, and I was too blind to see. You're not blind, I replied, my voice trembling. You were protecting yourself, just like me. He kissed me again, softer this time. A kiss that felt like a promise. A kiss that felt like an apology. A kiss that felt like a beginning. I love you, Lucas, he said when we broke apart again. And I think I've loved you for a lot longer than I'm willing to admit right now. I was just too cowardly to accept it. We both were, I corrected. Maybe, he agreed with a small smile. But we won't be anymore, right? I didn't know if I could promise that. I didn't know what would come after that moment. I didn't know how we'd be in the morning, when the adrenaline and emotions had calmed. I didn't know if we were doing the right thing, or making the biggest mistake of our lives. But when I looked into his eyes, when I saw the same vulnerability, the same fear, the same hope I was feeling reflected back at me, I knew one thing. I didn't regret it. We won't be anymore, I repeated, and it was a promise I intended to keep. He pulled me into another kiss, longer this time, deeper, more real, and I let myself get lost in it. Let go of all the fears, all the doubts, all the worries about the future for a moment. Because that night, on our old, uncomfortable couch, with the rain washing the world outside, Raphael and I crossed a line we could never uncross. We left the safety of friendship and stepped into the unknown territory of something more. And it was terrifying. But it was also the most right thing I had ever felt in my life. When we finally pulled apart, both of us gasping, I curled into his chest. He held me, kissing the top of my head. What do we do now? I asked quietly. Now? He repeated, and I could hear the smile in his voice. Now, we stay here. And tomorrow, we figure it out together. And together? I asked. Together, he confirmed. We stayed like that for an indeterminate amount of time, entangled with each other, listening to the rain, feeling each other's heartbeats gradually slow. We didn't need to talk. We didn't need to define what we were now or what we'd be tomorrow. In that moment, it was enough just to be. "Do you think we'll regret it tomorrow?" I asked into the dark. "Maybe," he admitted, holding me tighter. "But if we're afraid, we'll face it together." Right. Eventually, the emotional exhaustion began to weigh on us. My eyes grew heavy, and Raphael's breathing started to slow, growing deeper and steadier. "Sleep here with me," he murmured, still holding me. "On the couch?" A small laugh escaped him. "On the couch," he confirmed. "I don't want to let you go yet." And I didn't want to be let go. So we stayed there, squeezed onto our two-seater couch that definitely wasn't made for two people to sleep on, but that somehow became the most comfortable place in the world that night. As I slipped into sleep, the last thing I registered was the gentle kiss Raphael placed on my forehead and the low whisper I almost didn't hear. 2 years, Lucas. Sorry for making you wait so long." And then, for the first time, I slept easy. Little did I know the real storm wasn't the rain outside, but what would come with the sunrise. A reality where we were no longer just best friends. A reality that, as frightening as it was, I wouldn't trade for anything in that moment. I woke to sunlight hitting my face directly through the living room window. For a second, still half asleep, everything seemed normal. Just another lazy Sunday in our apartment. But then I felt Raphael's arm across my waist, felt the warmth of his body against my back, felt his breath on my neck. And everything came rushing back at once. The kiss, the confession. The 2 years I admitted I'd been hiding my feelings. His words saying he'd been in love with me for far too long too. My heart started racing instantly, because in the daylight, without the cover of the night, without the borrowed courage that vulnerability at 3 a.m. gives you, all of it felt absurdly real. And absolutely terrifying. I froze completely, trying to breathe without making a sound, trying not to wake Raphael, because as long as he was still asleep, I wouldn't have to face the conversation we were inevitably going to have. The conversation about what the hell we did last night. The conversation about what it meant. The conversation about whether it was a huge mistake or the beginning of something neither of us knows how to navigate. My mind spiraled. What if regret came with sobriety? The burning question, had we just destroyed 5 years of friendship for a midnight illusion? Had I misread everything? I tried to slip away quietly, to postpone the hard talk, but his arm tightened around my waist. "Don't run," he whispered, still with his eyes closed. "I know when you want to run, Lucas." "It's not that." I turned to face him, finally meeting those brown eyes that completely disarmed me. "It's just, in the daylight, everything looks different. Scarier." But Raphael studied me for a long moment, and I could see the same uncertainty reflected in his eyes. "Are you regretting it?" "No," I answered instantly, because it was true. "But I'm terrified." He exhaled slowly, as if he'd been holding his breath. "Me too," he admitted, his forehead resting against mine. "I could hardly sleep. I spent the whole night thinking that when you woke up, you'd realize you'd made a huge mistake, that you'd regret telling me about the 2 years, that you'd want to take it back." The raw honesty in his words completely disarmed me. "How could you think that? After everything we said?" "Because it's easier to believe it was a moment of madness than to accept that it's real." Raphael closed his eyes. "Because if it's real, Lucas, everything changes, and change is terrifying." I stayed quiet, absorbing his words, feeling their weight. He was right. If we accepted that this was real, that our feelings were real, there was no going back. We couldn't just go back to being two friends sharing an apartment, watching movies on the couch, pretending there was nothing more between us. But we also couldn't pretend last night hadn't happened. "Do you want to take it back?" I asked, my voice coming out more fragile than I intended. "Pretend it was just an emotional mix-up in the middle of the night?" Raphael opened his eyes, and the intensity of his gaze left me breathless. "No," he said firmly. "I've spent too much time pretending, Lucas. Pretending I was straight. Pretending I didn't feel what I feel for you. Pretending everything was fine when you went out with other guys and I was consumed with jealousy." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. I don't want to pretend anymore. But I also don't know how to do this. How do we become what we've become? I don't know, I admitted, and it was a huge relief to say the truth. I've never done this before. Never had. This, with someone who matters so much. We could ruin everything, Raphael said, but not as an argument, more like a frightening realization. Our friendship, everything we've built, if it doesn't work. I know, I interrupted, because I'd thought the exact same thing. But it could work too. Could, he repeated, as if testing out the weight of the word. It could work. We lay there, facing each other on the cramped living room couch, the morning sun lighting the room, warming the air around us. And for the first time since I woke up, I didn't feel like running. So, what do we do then? I asked softly. Raphael was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing absent patterns on my arm. The touch was simple, familiar, but now loaded with a completely different meaning. We try, he finally said. We don't need to have all the answers now. We don't need to define exactly what we are or where this is going. But we can try, without pretending, without hiding. And if it goes wrong? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Then at least we were honest. At least we were brave. He found my eyes again. Lucas, I spent 2 years lying to myself because I was scared. Scared of what my family would think. Scared of what my friends at the gym would say. Scared of not being who everyone expected me to be. And you know what that brought me? Loneliness. Because I was surrounded by people, but no one really knew me. I slid my hand to his, intertwining our fingers. I know you. You know me, he confirmed, squeezing my hand. And I want you to keep knowing me, the real version. Not the guy I pretend to be when I'm with the training crew. Not the guy who forces conversations about women because that's what everyone expects. Just me. The guy who stays up late watching true crime documentaries with you. The guy who cooks badly but keeps trying. The guy who is completely in love with his best friend. I felt tears sting my eyes. You don't have to pretend with me. You never did. I know. Now I know. He brought our intertwined hands to his lips, kissing my fingers gently. But it took me a while to accept it. To accept that I could be myself and still be loved. You are loved. The words came out before I could think. Exactly as you are. Raphael closed his eyes and a tear rolled down his cheek. When he opened them again, there was a determination there I hadn't seen before. Then let's do this, he said. The right way. No rushing, no pressure, but honest, with each other and with ourselves. No pretending, I agreed. No pretending, he repeated. And what if it gets complicated? I asked, because I needed to know he'd thought about that too. When it gets complicated, he corrected with a small, sad smile. Because it will. Nothing about this is easy. We'll have to deal with my family, with people asking questions, with the whole process of me coming out publicly. He took a deep breath. And that terrifies me. But you know what terrifies me more. Letting you go because I was too scared to try. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. We'll figure it out together. Together. He pulled my hand, bringing my body closer to his. I liked that word. We stayed wrapped around each other on the couch for a few more minutes, just breathing, absorbing the magnitude of what we were deciding. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. We didn't have all the answers. We didn't know if it would work out, if we'd be able to navigate all the difficulties that would inevitably come. But for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't hiding. For the first time since I realized I was in love with my best friend, I could simply feel without having to smother it, without having to pretend, without having to protect myself. And Raphael, who had spent so long hiding behind a version of himself he thought he should be, was choosing to be seen. Choosing courage instead of fear. And we were choosing that together. "Hey," Raphael said after a while, his voice lighter now. "Want some coffee? The way you like it? Really strong and bitter." I laughed, feeling something like hope swell in my chest. "You hate my coffee." "I know, but you love it, so I learned to like it." "Is that how it works?" I asked, getting up from the couch and reaching for his hand. "We learn to like the things the other person loves?" Raphael took my hand, letting me pull him up. "It's a start." "Coffee?" he asked, tugging me toward the kitchen. "And then we'll figure out the rest." "Step by step," I agreed. As he complained about my coffee scoop in the maker, our old routine came back. But now with touches and smiles we no longer had to hide. We had time. Raphael had seen me. And he had stayed. If you've ever had to choose between fear and the truth, share your story in the comments.